some reason, Batman just always stood out. It's one of the major characters of the 20th century, and so many people connect to it on such a deep level and for so many different reasons. The first conversation I had with Matt about it, I just knew there was something radically different from anything we'd seen in Batman movies before.
Batman is one of the cornerstones of the DCU. His story, spanning nearly 85 years, has captured the hearts of many DC fans who are interested in the character, and with his next reboot on the horizon, I want to talk about what exactly makes a good Batman movie. Now, as someone who has loved the DC Universe on and off for the past few years, whether it be the DCEU, the Arrowverse, or something else entirely, my heart has always belonged to Batman. He's easily one of the most recognisable characters in this world, alongside Superman of course, and previous movies, while successful, have yet to capture the comic book feel that I personally have been waiting to see in a Batman film. Now, recently we got the news that the upcoming movie Brave and the Bold will be helmed by Andy Muschietti, known for directing the It movies and more recently The Flash, and one of the few positives noted by moviegoers was how Muschietti tackled Batman, and that does give me hope for this movie. Now, despite what various adaptations such as the Snyderverse and the Nolan films may tell you, Batman doesn't have to be a dark and brooding character. Yes, that is part of the appeal, but he is far more than that. To many, Batman is a symbol of hope to the people of Gotham, and that's one of the many things I hope Brave and the Bold tries to achieve with this movie. Now, this film in particular will be drawing specifically from one of Grant Morrison's many runs on the Batman character. Now, Morrison's comic run introduces Damian Wayne to general audiences for the first time, which is a pretty huge deal because Damian is one of the many members of the Bat family yet to get a live-action portrayal, though had Titans continued for 2 more seasons then I could have seen them use Damian as a plot point down the line. But moving on. When crafting a new iteration of Batman, we need to differentiate it from the previous portrayals, and for me, the perfect live-action Batman lies in between 3 variants of the character, these being Michael Keaton, the Arkhamverse Batman, and the DC animated Batman from the animated series. All 3 of these have, in some way, captured the essence of what Batman should be as a character, someone motivated by his tragedy, using his skills and knowledge to protect his city. Now, with the introduction of Damian in this movie, this also gives us the added bonus of seeing a live-action Bat family on screen. We've gotten the 3 Robins courtesy of Titans and Batwoman courtesy of the Arrowverse, but the CW wasn't allowed to use Batman as a character. They alluded to him, sure, but he was never seen on screen as part of the story. But with this new DCU, we finally have a chance to see Batman and the Bat family all on screen together, which is literally just incredible to think about here. Now, you'll actually notice that I haven't mentioned one certain portrayal of the Dark Knight so far up to this point, but I am going to bring him up now. Matt Reeves' Batman movie was nothing short of spectacular. It was a noir-driven detective story that finally gave the Batman character the love and attention he deserved after all this time. Now, James Gunn has said on more than one occasion, I believe, that Reeves will be allowed to continue his story with his Batman, while the main DCU will feature their own variant of the character, which I think is a very smart move, because they could have easily brought that movie and its associated universe into the new canon, but Gunn is allowing Reeves and his team to have that creative freedom as part of the DC Elseworlds label, and I really respect that. Now, while I absolutely loved how Robert Pattinson portrayed Bruce in this movie, it's more of an experimental portrayal, because he's not yet the established hero we know him as. Now, I have discussed at length my thoughts on Pattinson's Batman, along with some other ideas like sequels and whatnot, so go and check out the many videos I made on that movie on the channel, so there'll either be links in the description or in the sidebar thing. Now, when looking at a villain for this movie, that might be one of the most difficult decisions that any filmmaker/director has actually had to make if they're one of the few people chosen to actually direct a Batman movie. Tim Burton chose rogues like Joker, Catwoman and the Penguin, while Nolan chose others like Scarecrow, Bane and Two-Face, just to name a few. However, the important thing we need to keep in mind is Damian. With his inclusion in this reboot, then I think it's time that Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins got their time in the spotlight. Now, we did of course get Ra's and Talia in the Nolan films, but it's been over 10 years since we've seen them on film, so I think it would be a good shout to have them come back in this movie. I am aware of other portrayals in Gotham and the Arrowverse, but those are purely TV portrayals, so I'm focusing solely on film here. Now, in various iterations of the DC Universe, the League of Assassins are located in Nanda Parbat, to the best of my knowledge. However, I think it would be really cool to see Ra's and the League in Brave and the Bold having a background in Japanese culture. Now, I have nothing against the other cultures they're a part of in other iterations of the League in the comics, but I've always loved the idea of Ra's al Ghul leading a cult of samurai warriors, plus a lot of martial arts that Batman studied to protect Gotham have their roots in Japanese teachings, at least to my knowledge. But with Damian being introduced, we of course need to include Talia. Now, how Damian's conception would work regarding the timeline is fairly simple actually. Have flashbacks to Bruce and Talia when Bruce first seeks out Ra's and the League to learn their teachings, and we can see Bruce and Talia slowly growing affectionate for each other. Now, in the comics, Damian's conception is a little unusual to say the least, as he was run in some kind of artificial womb to spare Talia the labours of pregnancy. Now, alongside Ra's and Talia, I would love to see Deathstroke appear as well, because not only is Slade Wilson a formidable opponent, but a war veteran studying ancient forms of combat is just plain badass in my opinion, although I think I've heard that story before. Okay, we've talked about these characters at length, so let's actually cast them now, shall we? Now, I'm going to keep things to a minimum and cast the following characters: Batman, Alfred, Damian, Ra's al Ghul, Talia, Deathstroke, Nightwing, and Tim Drake. Now, while I am open to seeing more members of the Bat family like Barbara Gordon or Jason Todd showing up, I'm going to keep things to a minimum for now, but drop your thoughts on who you'd cast as these characters in the comments below. So, I'll be going through a couple of the easy castings to begin with, then I'll get to the ones that I feel need a little more explaining. For Tim Drake, I've cast Ryan Potter. For Dick Grayson, I've cast Mina Masad, who you'll know from the live-action Aladdin film. For Deathstroke, I've cast Stephen Lang. I just feel like he fits that role in my opinion. And for Alfred Pennyworth, I've cast Pierce Brosnan. Now, onto the characters that need a little more explanation. Starting off with Ra's al Ghul, I've cast Hiroyuki Sanada. This to me is a really good idea because, as mentioned, I've always loved the idea of Ra's and the League having a background in Japanese mythology, so that's mainly why I've cast him in the role. And moving on to Talia, her role was very tricky to cast, but after a lot of searching I've landed on Elodie Yung. You'll know her for her work on the Daredevil Netflix series where she played Elektra, and she has a very combat-heavy role on that show. Also, on a side note, shout out to my friend Alex who loves Daredevil. Now, moving on to Damian, this casting for me is at least a no-brainer, because I've stood by this for quite a while now, and I'm sure a lot of people have as well, but I believe that Aidan Gallagher would be a pretty kick-ass Damian in my opinion. Now, Gallagher is no stranger to superhero roles, having played the role of number 5 in Netflix's Umbrella Academy since the show's first season. I need to get to that show because people have just told me it looks really good. And finally, we come down to our new Batman. You all know where I'm going with this, and I hope you can all stand with me on this, but my fan cast for the new DCU Batman is Jensen Ackles. This guy was made for this role, he's a huge fan of Batman, plus he's supposedly on a shortlist to play the character, and believe me, he has to beat out everyone else on that list, though it probably won't be that difficult, will it? Let's be honest here. Now, the story in terms of what we're looking at here is very difficult to tackle, but I think I've got a pretty good idea in mind for this. So the story will take place a few months into Damian's time as Robin, but we see flashbacks to Bruce discovering the truth about Damian, him training with Ra's before he became Batman, along with his relationship during that period with Talia, which led to Damian's conception. By the end of Act 1, Talia has arrived in Gotham and tells Bruce that she wants Damian to come home now, and Bruce of course refuses, and Talia says, so be it. And Act 2 will focus on Talia's attempts to take down Bruce by sending Deathstroke after him because, well, if there's a man dressed like a bat stopping you from seeing your son, you gotta hire an assassin. Maybe. I don't know how that works. Now, eventually, Damian is actually the one to incapacitate Slade, which ends with the assassin losing his eye. Now, depending on which canon we're looking at, Slade has lost his eye in various circumstances, but in, I believe, the Son of the Batman animated film, Slade loses his eye thanks to Damian. I'm not sure how accurate that is, so don't quote me on that. Act 3 will shift focus onto Bruce and Damian versus Ra's and Talia. Our heroes will of course emerge victorious, with Damian fatally injuring the head of the League. Talia decides to allow Damian to stay with his father, but promises Bruce that one day the Great White Ra's al Ghul will return to claim his heir. Okay, I think I've got a pretty decent story laid out here, but whether we'll see anything like it on screen is up to Andy Muschietti and everyone involved on the film. However, that does bring to a close on this video about how to make a Batman film, and if you did enjoy it, then be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.